Runway Incursions, how bad are they? Flying in the lower flight levels, what you can and can't do. And rushing through a career, how progressing through too quickly could be harmful to your career and the industry as a whole. I'm going to discuss all this and more coming right up. So strap in and let's get into it.
Standby star 9000, 1013, Kilo 25. Coordinating aileron and rudder, bank, balance, back pressure, rolling to 30 degrees. That's 30 degrees there. 3 left, runway 29, 1631.
G'day everyone and welcome to episode 109 of the Flight Training Australia podcast. Whether you're listening in Newman or Newcastle, Narracourt to Nooka and everywhere in between, this is the podcast all about flight training and flying in Australia and beyond. G'day, how you going? I'm your host Trent Robinson and thank you for joining us. Well, another huge week, lots going on in the industry as a whole, and for me, YouTube finally got up and running. I promise. See, I told you. It's only taken, 12 months? But hey, we're there, and thank you everyone for your kind messages and support. Video version of the podcast, I guess. But again, you've got to start somewhere, and I'm really glad that you've all enjoyed it, that they're listening, had some great feedback, and I will, like I said, try not to make it a one-hit wonder and get some more out very, very soon. If you haven't watched it already, go check out YouTube. Just look up the Flight Training Australia channel, subscribe, hit the notification bell, leave comments, like all that stuff. Look, it's not so much for me to get the likes and try and be an influencer and all this crap, but for me, the likes and the content means it's going to be found by others like you guys, and that's what's more important to me. I'm not looking to be a YouTube sensation, but hey, if it happens, I won't say no. But it's not about that. Everything I put on Instagram, on YouTube, on Facebook, all that sort of stuff, it's all about either some good entertainment or educational value. But there'll usually always be a message or out of interest for you guys to see what goes on in my world and the world of aviation around us. So please jump on, subscribe to all those, and again, look forward to getting some more out very, very soon. Speaking of YouTube, a bit of a new feature that's just come out recently. I have added some of the podcast episodes onto YouTube. Some people like to listen on YouTube, so if that's you, let me know. I've only put about the last 12 months or so on there. I haven't done the whole catalogue, but any new episode will be added. So if that's a easier way for you to listen, or just chuck it on the telly while you're at home and you want to listen, I guess it's different depending on how we've all got our Spotify's and Apple Podcasts wired up to speakers and things around the house. But yeah, if that's an option for you, fantastic. But yeah, let me know. I know there's been a few listens or watches, I don't know how to say it so far already, but yeah, let me know about that one. Other exciting news, got a new partnership that I've formed with someone who will be very, very exciting, I think, and allow me to do a lot of things in the near future. So that's what I'm going to say right now. Just going to drop that little teaser in there, but there will be more on that in the next month or so and what's happening, and very, very excited about that. And finally, before we get into the episode, some other fantastic news that I received and has just been formally announced. The Australian Flying Magazine, in conjunction with CASA, have the 2023 CASA Wings Awards, and these are awards that recognise achievements of flyers and instructors, clubs and services in general aviation. And CASA, the division of the Royal Australian Society and Australian Flying, congratulate the following winners. Colpay Award for Lifetime of Service to General Aviation goes to Rod Birrell. The Aero Club of the Year Award goes to the Royal Victorian Aero Club. And the Flying Instructor Year Award goes to yours truly. Yeah, I can't even believe it. It's really fantastic and very, very grateful for all that. So thank you for those that nominated me. Yeah, like I guess there'll be some more info on that on the March-April magazine that comes out soon. But to receive that award, the Flight Instructor of the Year Award, is just a fantastic thing, and recognising the work that I'm doing. And just, it's as I say, the flight instructors, I think the flying instructor role is just so important in industry to ensure that we have the best quality pilots out there and we maintain the amazing standards we have in Australia. And it's just an honour and a privilege to be part of that process. So thank you very much. Very, very humbled to win that one, and look forward to sharing more information on that one with you soon. All right, so let's get into today's episode. And look, God, this whole thing in Japan, I think everyone's seen it. First of all, there was an earthquake and tsunami. And if that wasn't bad enough, then there was this aviation incident, which, look, let's face it, could have been absolutely horrendous. And thank God it didn't end up as bad as it potentially could. Absolute hats off to the crew. I think there's so many messages. Even, as you know, I'm not one to start making judgments before, the official findings come out. But there's no doubt, like, that the handling, from what we can see so far for the crew, whilst it took a little while to get everybody out, not opening doors when there's fire outside. We talk about this all the time. And whether you're flying a 172 or a Baron or A350, it just goes to show that, if you're going to sit in an exit row, I can guarantee to the majority of people, it's just extra leg room. Push come to shove, heaven help us. I'd want to know who exactly is sitting in that seat and if they are actually going to be able to perform the task, because all our lives hang in the balance there. And this is just as important, that when you're doing your own passenger safety checks and your briefings and that sort of stuff, that people understand what to do, especially when it's like a low-wing Piper sort of aircraft or something, where the right-hand door, passenger door, is your emergency exit, and they are now sitting between you and it. So, take the time. It doesn't have to be really anal and serious and presented with a carrot up your butt, but make sure you make them aware of what their role is. And, just check if there's fire or anything else out. We're not going to go out that way. Don't just open it in a panic to try and get out, which is going to be a lot of people's natural instincts. It's the other thing it definitely highlights here, again, all sorts of versions of the transcripts showing at the moment, and people saying, it's lost in translation, even though all the calls were made in English. So I'm not sure how that works. But the translation of how this language has been simplified in these transcripts is the problem, because it significantly changes the meaning depending on which one you listen to. So I don't think we can pay too much attention to those right now. But what we can say is there is no doubt that communication combined with seeing, hearing, and avoiding is a major factor in this incident or accident. It's terrible that 5 lives have been lost, and we're just very fortunate that more weren't. But again, similar to the episode I released a few weeks ago about the trust we place in ATC, that we can't just do what they say. We've got to verify what they say and convince ourselves as well that what they've said to do is the correct thing. NOTAMs were available at Haneda Airport, that the stop bars were unserviceable. Again, the old Swiss cheese of all times to stop an aircraft from lining up without a clearance. Had those stop bars been working, that could have avoided the accident. Again, nothing is foolproof, but it would have gone a long way to helping prevent that horrible accident. So the message is, irrespective of what the final outcome is for all of us, is a strong reminder that we must always remain vigilant, not to become complacent. Runway incursions are happening all over the world, including here in Australia. And CASA just recently released a little roundtable discussion there about an incident at Perth with, I think it was Perth. Anyway, 2 737s, one doing a high-speed taxi exit and nearly crossed the runway in the path of another departing aeroplane, which again would have just been a disaster here in Australia. So it's not an overseas problem. Jump on YouTube and look at all those air traffic control transcript videos and stuff in America. There's airplanes lining up on taxiways and people crossing runways and go-arounds, and it's just, I don't know, is it getting worse? Is it just because we're flying more so it seems worse? It's one of those statistics that's hard to get real clear view on. But either way, it is definitely a thing. So always check on final. Don't just listen to controllers. If you're at uncontrolled airports, make sure you make your taxi call. Don't just then assume because no one said anything that the runway's clear. Always give people time to respond. Remember, if you're short final, you're going to be talking on the radio, you're going to be focusing on your landing. So put yourself in the other aircraft, make sure that you've said something, give it a chance, and position yourself that you have good, clear view of the approach paths. And when the wind is a little bit variable, remember, people could be coming from either end as well. Alrighty. Now, this one, flight in the lower flight levels. When Part 91 came out and the new regs, there was some changes. And one of the changes was talking about supplemental oxygen and the ability to fly in, flight level 120, 12,000 feet without any oxygen, or maybe up to 30 minutes, or again, all sorts of different variations. And people have, as they tend to do with the regs, latched onto this amazing concept. Yeah, I get to fly in the flight levels, and doing it so illegally. So what I want to do is just let's do what I tell you to do when there's uncertainties. Let's go to the source. And a lot of you have actually messaged me about this over the last 6 to 12 months. And I have spoken to some operators as well saying, hey, you need to stop doing that. Not necessarily operators, but pilots within the operations, because it is not legal. That's not what the regs say. So let's get into it. Let's have a look. And if this is applicable to you, I strongly recommend that you have a look at these sections, and I will list I'll try and link them. But usually when I link the MOS, it just sends you to the whole thing, but I'll put the references in the episode description so you can look at those later on. So first of all, let's start at the base level. Part 91 manual standards is what applies to everybody on a base level. So in this case, pretty much private operations. So paragraph or division 26.11, which is the oxygen equipment and oxygen supplies. And we want to have a look at paragraph 26 or chapter 26.43, and that's supplemental oxygen. The very first statement, part 1, says an aircraft must carry sufficient supplemental oxygen to meet the requirements set out in table 2643 brackets 2, which is obviously to come. So we'll get to that. Then it says an aircraft to which what I just said applies, as per the table, must be fitted with or carry supplemental oxygen equipment capable of storing and dispensing the supplemental oxygen to crew members and passengers. All right, so that's a significant thing. So what it says is must be fitted with or carry, i.e. it can be a fixed installation oxygen system, or it can be transportable oxygen bottles with the appropriate cannulas and face masks or whatever else that is needed to dispense it. All right, so if we scroll down, there is another section there, but it's not really relevant to what we're talking about now. So if you have a look at the table, supplemental oxygen requirements, item 1, column 1 says person, the flight crew member or crew, and then the second item is the passenger. Let's just have a look at the pilot. A, for any period exceeding 30 minutes, when the cabin pressure altitude is continuously at least flight level 125, but less than flight level 140, there must be supply for the entire period. All right, so referencing back to at the top of what I said, an aircraft that what I just said applies for continuous flight at least flight level 125, you need oxygen for any period exceeding 30 minutes. So what that means is we can fly up to flight level 125 for any amount of time with no oxygen fitted or carried. So you don't need any oxygen at all. All right. Now, this is an ability that is given in for private operations. So if you have an aircraft or private operation that you want to fly at flight level 120, you can 100% do that for whatever time frame you want. However, just because you can doesn't mean you should. So the things or the considerations I'd put in there is if you want to fly at flight level 120, what QNH setting should you use? hopefully you've all realized that you've gone through the transition layer and you should be on QNH 1013. All right, but what about if we want to go at flight level 110? Okay, depending on what the QNH is, given the area QNH and the static QNH, sometimes flight level 110 is not available because the buffer between what would be effectively 1013 and higher will shrink this separation layer to too close to each other. All right, so we're basically going to break within 1,000 feet sort of separation. So that's not going to be available. All right, now this is all in the AIP, and this is stuff that you need to be familiar with because otherwise you'll be on the wrong QNH, which will put you on the wrong altitude. It's going to break down separation requirements. The other thing is time of useful consciousness at these levels. Now, flight level 120, 130 is our typical cabin depressurized altitude that aircraft will come down to. So pressurized aircraft will descend to, and there is sufficient oxygen there. However, you will feel mild symptoms of hypoxia at some point. All right, the air is getting thin. And if you're doing this at nighttime, then it will be effectively a much higher altitude. So there'll be even thinner air, less oxygen available to you. So these are things that 100% must be factored in and considered when you're flying at this level. Okay. All right. So that is private operations part 91. Now, if we have a look at charter operations now, so let's just have a look at part 135. In here, we need to go to the part 135 MOS, and this is in Division 9, 11.41. All right, so this is 11.41 supplemental oxygen, unpressurized aeroplanes. All right, same sort of statement. An unpressurized aeroplane operating at a pressure altitude above 10,000 feet must be fitted with or carry sufficient supplemental oxygen to meet the requirements. Okay, so that's pretty much it there. An irrelevant aeroplane to which the section I just read applies must be fitted with or carry supplemental oxygen. And this is the big difference. A, we're now not talking about flight level 125, we're talking about above 10,000 feet. Therefore, to fly above 10,000 feet, you don't have to have oxygen, but you have to be fitted with oxygen equipment. All right. And this is what I've had to say to some people, that you do not have equipment stored in your aeroplane. So it doesn't have to have oxygen in it. It just has to have an oxygen system. So it doesn't matter if you're going to do it for 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, you just can't do it. All right. So part 135 operations for equipment that has not got oxygen systems, you cannot be flying at flight level 125. All right. So hopefully that clears things up. It's just as simple as that. They're the statements. They're the regs. Like I said, I will link these in the episode description so you can have a good flick through and read of that yourself. It might take a couple of times to read because it doesn't actually say, like for the part 91 operations, that you can fly when it says you can't fly. Therefore, below 125, you can. So it's making the can't statement rather than the can statement. So it is a little bit confusing. And I will admit, going through this, getting ready for this episode again, I was reading it and it was right in front of me and it still wasn't making sense as to, hang on, this is the section I'm looking for. So just be aware of that. All right. So finally, just to wrap things up, I just wanted to touch quickly on career progression. Career progression. There we go. So rushing. I've spoken to a lot of people and listened to a lot of other podcasts as well, both here and in Australia and internationally. And something that just seems to keep coming up is to slow down, don't rush, enjoy the journey. And there is so much wisdom in these words. What I want to just point out, and again, I'm not going to turn this into a lecture or anything else, but just really think about and be honest with yourself to say, are you ready to move on? Now, you will see other people going on and you'll get serious FOMO, fear of missing out, not wanting to miss out on opportunities because you see everyone else moving on ahead. But as I keep telling you guys, there are so many people out there that are not making it. They are thinking they're moving on to their dream job and they're walking away completely empty-handed. And usually the reason is because they went too soon. All right. So just really think about it. Enjoy what GA brings it's not just the experience. I know the pay's not necessarily always as good, but it's the experience, the flying experience that you gain, the exposure to different operations, different locations, different airspace, different weather, all that stuff that shapes you and rounds you and molds you into the pilot you're going to be. And it will make you safer, more confident, and ultimately more hireable in the end. All right, so just take time with things and be careful about, the advice, I guess, you listen to. Here I am giving you advice, but hopefully I've established that I reasonably know what I'm talking about here. And this isn't just coming from me. This is coming from people all over the place, heads of operations, chief pilots, and check-in trainers and all that sort of stuff. I've got people I contact and keep in touch with all over industry. A lot of my former colleagues are all pilots in industry now and falling into these check-in training roles now and seeing firsthand themselves the problems that we're sort of facing and emerging. Some of these problems as well, just on a bit of a side note, I think is, again, just watch the advice that you follow on some of these online forums and things, because I'm just watching the advice that's been given and I'm like, oh my God, like, it's just so wrong and it's incorrect and it's confusing people. And remember, if you go and do whatever that advice was that was wrong, that's potentially going to get yourself into strife. All right. Hopefully not. I don't think in the initial instance, Kath is going to, throw the book at you. It was an innocent mistake. But remember about strict liability. If you do it, then, you're accountable for it. So just make sure you get your advice from a trustworthy source and don't put all your eggs in the basket of online forums and message boards and that sort of stuff. Remember, the rules and the regs are all here. So this is what this podcast is for, to help discuss this stuff. If you've got questions, please send them to me. Even if I've gone through it before, I'll answer you. I'll direct you to it. Or if it's something that's coming up, I'll put it in an episode like this one and cover it off for you all. All right. But the questions, I don't know, people, it sort of feeds into what I keep talking about with people don't seem to look stuff up anymore. It's just easy to go and ask somebody. And this is, again, leading towards your ability to be independent and look after yourself in the big world, especially when you move into the airline environment where you're not getting your hand held as much as you're usually used to, even in some GA environments as well. So just be mindful of that. Make sure you get good advice and keep bettering yourself, keep developing yourself, ask questions, find out what's going on. And if you really can't find it, then like I've had a lot of people, they've asked me questions, they've referenced the regs and they're still just trying to get their head around it. They're the questions I love because they've already gone out to try and find out for themselves. So that's what we love to see. All right, guys, that is it for this episode 109. Next week, it should be a good one. I'm going to be talking to you about flight tests and everything that we as examiners are looking for in you, the applicant. Whether you are doing an RPL test or a ATPL test or anything in between, this is applicable to everybody. So that's going to be next week, talking about what we're looking for as examiners. And there'll be some fantastic tips and things there as well to help you prepare for any flight test that you're going for. All right. There will be, I've got heaps planned. There's a lot of RPL, PPL level stuff I'm going to start going back to. We're going to talk about stalling, spinning. You would have seen the spinning video that I posted a little while ago. We're going to talk about that. Stalling practices, techniques, circuit stuff. Get really into some of the basics as well. So heaps to come. Stay tuned. Lock it in. Get the notifications in. Please don't stop leaving reviews on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. I read all of them and I love seeing those. There's also a feature on Spotify now that you can leave comments or questions or feedback, but just be mindful that some of you have asked me a question. I can't actually respond to that. So please leave like a statement saying that was the most amazing episode I've ever heard. But if you've got a question, throw that into either my email or hit me up on Instagram, LinkedIn, or any of those other TikTok forums, that sort of stuff. You can get me there and I'll happily answer your question. All right, guys, have a fantastic week. Hopefully it's raining this week. It's not going to be necessarily the best for flying, but we desperately need it. And the temperatures are going to come down and the monsoon's going to hit. That'll be fantastic. We really, really need it. All right, guys. Until then, blue skies if you're flying. Otherwise, thunder and lightning and rain if you're on the ground watching it, enjoying it, staying cool in the tropics. And remember the golden rule. Aviate, navigate, communicate. Cheers, everyone.